Okay,
You get it?
we can try.
Yeah, we can give it a try. So, good evening. Here, quite pleased to say I'm on Zoom tonight with Clive Stewart from West Start Apiaries and the founder of the UKBR, the UK Bee Removers. I think it's quite an exciting time to have you on, Clive, because you've recently released
Yeah,
a guide to the safe removal of honeybee colonies from buildings. There's been some developments in honeybees treatment over the last few years, which I think every pest controller is pretty much aware of. But lately, I know you've been on one or two. Alex Wade runs a Friday night, and I believe now a Sunday during the day Zoom meeting for pest controllers, a networking event.
yeah.
Call it Will. And there's been a number of things which have been brought up on there. The first one was brought up was about the UKBR and where it is, why it is where it is, and where it's heading. And it was quite noticeable to me that there is a lot of confusion from some of the people about why the UKBR is where it is and the decisions that have been made. And I think when it was explained to people, the position that the UKBR was in, where it had got itself and where it was trying to go, it became obvious of why it's there. But as with anything, there's always some detractors who want to pull away from it. And I think it'd be quite nice to run through with you just a quick sort of synopsis of where it was, and then maybe where it got to and where it is heading.
Well, it developed itself, Sean, from when I left mainstream pest control, working for a medium-sized organisation. And I was at a loose end between sort of working for myself and that position. And I recognised that there was still a lot of confusion for the public in finding somebody to do something about honeybees in particular. So general public, I think you've probably come across a story yourself many times where Joe Public goes along, thinks they need the help of a beekeeper, rings a beekeeper, and they come along and they go, sorry, no, we can't help you with those bees in that chimney. You need a pest controller. And as we all know, pest controllers have gone along of late, looked at the job and said, no, sorry, you need the help of a beekeeper. And poor Joe Bloggs is left in the middle trying to find somebody to help them. And hence the beginnings of the UKBR. It was there to try and use it as a conduit to bring together beekeepers, pest controllers, bee removers, and the public to see one place where they might be able to get assistance.
Yeah. Okay, so where did it get to? What was the story from its inception through to, say, I don't know, maybe just up to the date? Let's go.
So the story of its inception, Facebook was its first platform, its starting place, where I suppose the start of the story really begins. Setting up a Facebook group with like-minded people. I think you were on at the beginning of that part of it, quite early on.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say, but yeah, probably until a few months ago, wasn't it?
Along with others, and a lot of people just coming into it and starting to look at bee removal as an option to do, part of their pest control businesses such as yours and one or two others, and for them to gain it more information and help move it along in a sort of methodical and informative way.
Mhm.
Does that sound?
Yeah.
Does that conclude in the similar sort of way as you've seen it yourself develop?
No, actually, no. It kind of is, but not. I don't think so. I think you're probably selling yourself short. I think from my point of view, or an outsider looking in, the first I knew of honeybee removal. So from a sort of business point of view, we'd started taking out bumblebee nests rather than killing them, etc. I didn't see the need for it. And then obviously, because I don't know what it's like where you are, we must get 300, 400, 500 calls for tree bees.
Yeah.
It gets more every year. And to start off with, probably through a lot of lack of understanding. And I'll always be dead honest. I was very much the pest controller. I would have went in and killed them. You know, if I calmed them, it was on the label. It
Yeah.
was the answer. The customers were happy. I was happy. Everyone was happy. And then it got to a point where I thought, well, I don't have to kill these. And I think as you get older, you become, I would like to think everybody becomes a lot more conscious of the decisions that you make. So we started taking a few of them out. Probably had very few calls for honeybees. But I can remember ringing up and asking for advice on my first few honeybee jobs on how to euthanize them, and that was the truth. And the advice wasn't guaranteed. It was very
No.
suck it and see and work it out as you go. But we were taking bumblebee nests out, and then I went to a breakfast meeting in Manchester, I think it was, where I met you.
Yeah, I remember the day clearly.
Yeah, you're giving a talk for the MPTA, and I had a lad working with us at the time. I remember I just looked at him. I said, "This is us. This is the direction we're going in now." And he said, "No, we're not. This isn't what we do." I said, "You watch this space. This is where this is going." I could just feel it. And then when I
I
talked,
think that'd be back in 2019.
18, I think it was.
Might have been even 18.
18, I think it was. Or 19, I can't remember. It's been a fair few years now. But yeah, and then through seeing that, I can remember, well, it was pre-COVID, I guarantee, because I can remember asking you about coming on one of the courses you were talking about. And then I started watching you do the circuit, going to Scotland, to Essex, to wherever, pushing this message out of you don't have to kill them. It was something we could buy into. And it kind of went from there. And then the Facebook group started, and it was quite funny because I think from watching the start of the Facebook group, there was a handful of people who were on it who were capable of doing the job. Talking one or two, and it was the message early on was very much you don't have to kill them, there's another way.
Yeah.
And it just grew legs, didn't it?
Oh, it has.
Yeah.
And as you know, my philosophy has always been along the lines of teaching other people to do this so others can go out and do it. It's not just sticking, and that's as much for the bee health as much as anything else.
Yeah.
It's to try and help reduce people traveling about the country, removing them from one area and then taking them back to another and starting to spread notifiable diseases, as you well know. So that was another key thing the UKBR is trying to sort of work on, as well as helping the conduit of information from bee removers to pest controllers to the public, and all mingling in the same sort of circle.
Yeah. And then, of course, the UKBR was formed. I'm glad to say I was a part of it in some sort of way, shape, and form at some point, and I still feel like I'm part of the UKBR. Although I've other things on at the minute, I'll always be there. I know I'll always be there. But then I think it's fair to say that there was some decisions that had to be made, wasn't there? And people don't know a lot of what goes on or what was actually.
Oh yeah, no. So one of the key things that we were doing at the very early stages, as you well know, Sean, was going around some of the shows and the like to try and promote the UKBR.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I did these shows I realised how much it costs people to put stands on, and costs people to put promotional things, leaflets, and everything else that goes along with that. It's quite a costly thing to go and do. Time, fuel, all of it needs paying for. And if it was just me gaining the work from it, that might not have been so bad. But because it was sort of the work was being sort of spread across the board, across the members as it was in the early days, and people were picking up the work, nothing was coming back in any contribution to help towards funding any of the promotional work. So we had to take the difficult decision, as it was then, to create the membership as you see it today.
Yeah.
And it's worked quite well.
Yeah, but it's fair to say, isn't it, that had membership not been brought in, then the UKBR was absolutely untenable in the way it was going, because it was
absolutely it couldn't go in the direction that it's going, and it's still evolving. So when we brought in the membership early part of last year, there was quite a lot of hiccups in it and bits and pieces. It didn't run smoothly. It was a bit junky. We took on board all the feedback we were getting, and what you've got to remember is, Sean, and you know this, the people behind UKBR give their time willingly and voluntary. They asked for no monies back in lieu, and so therefore the work is not, it's not like the BPCA and the MPTA, where they've got groups of people working in offices that are able to organise and contribute all these things. This is made up of volunteers that they give their time freely, and so it has its limitations at the moment, but hopefully as it evolves, we might be able to afford an office and a group of people. A lot of people.
Fair to say to people at this moment in time, and I can say up to the point where I don't want to say not involved with them anymore, because I do feel like I am, but from the moment I was no longer sort of involved in decision making or whatever, and I'm guessing it's probably still the same, not one person has taken a penny for anything.
No, absolutely not.
Has been spent on a service or a product, whether that's insurance, which people forget, whether that's a load of leaflets, posters.
So at the very beginning, I didn't realise we were going to need insurance. The way at the very start of it, when we became an organisation, when we took that step to become membership, we needed to put insurances in place, not only from several different points of view, and there was a cost to that. So that's been that's come out of the pockets of those that have put in.
Who paid for that?
Sorry?
Who paid for it?
The large majority was myself, Tim Wiley, and other members have put in. I remember you contributing, and one or two of the other admin team contributed towards getting it up and running and going and everything else. And a lot of people say, oh, well, you can claim that back on your tax, but you can't claim back the expenses of one company on your own company. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. The accountancy for it all is a little more complicated than it's seen. So
major problems as well with, I can remember went through a point where everyone said, oh yeah, we'll chip in. There was an issue because they couldn't take.
That's right. At the very early start of it, everybody wanted to do a contribution, and then once we created that limited company, that couldn't happen in that way. because it wasn't easily accountable for. It had to be seen coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
It wasn't that straightforward, unfortunately.
Yeah. So ultimately, the decision's made that membership is going to be charged.
Yeah.
That the money it's a not-for-profit organisation, is it?
Yes, a non-for-profit organisation. The books hopefully will be sorted for. I'm not quite sure, so I don't do the accountancy part, but I believe they'll be done for April. They'll be public to everybody, so they can see those.
Yeah, and and it's fair to say that every penny that is brought in is spent on that, and there's no doubt about it. Work comes in through the Facebook page. People
Yeah.
on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
There is also work that comes in through the website quite a bit, and that website's got to be paid for. The hosting's got to come, and that work goes out to, or was early on, going out to anybody who went on the Facebook page and said, I can do bee removals.
Yeah.
Now it goes out to paying members.
So how it runs now, Sean, we're probably tying into this quite nicely, but how it runs now, and I say it now, it's about to be updated. And there will be, like there is on the MPTA and the BPCA, there'll be a button for find a bee remover.
Right.
We're actually just developing that over this weekend.
Right.
It'll be in play properly, I think, mid-February, and it'll be able to, but public that go to that website will be able to click on that and see bee removers in their area.
Perfect. Yeah. And then, of course, the message, isn't it? The message has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I'll just drop back to that button, Sean. The one thing that button, I believe, is going to do is take you to a triage form. Now, I know that was a bit of a thing at the beginning of last year, but that triage form is actually quite important. It helps us statistically try and put some information together. So going forward, and as the UKBR evolves, we're going to be able to provide the likes of DEFRA if asked. And I believe and hope that the UKBR get brought into healthy bee plans in the future, helps build a picture up of possible disease outbreaks and whether or not they marry up or knit together or are part of feral bee colonies and that sort of thing. So that's the sort of reason we've got that triage form there. And it also helps us collect the information as to how many enquiries we have. So 2022 ended with around about just shy of 400 enquiries. Now, not all those were jobs. Some of them would be honeybee jobs, some of them bumblebee jobs, some of them solitary bees. And that's the sort of, and they were across the country. So
I think, I'm just thinking we've missed something here though, haven't we?
What's that?
There's another reason why membership was brought in as well, and that was to do with standards, wasn't it? There's no.
Well, that is another thing. It's to help promote that safety aspect, and that's that's part and parcel of the book.
Yeah, I know when we were on that call that night, there was some criticisms. The message was that it was a land grab, that that there was people out there who were previously getting loads and loads of work from that page who aren't getting it anymore, and some people saw it as unfair. And I think my response to it was going to go bust, so they're going to get, well, not go bust, but it was going to shut, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they get no work from it at all.
It couldn't continue. Just one person or a small number of people pumping money into it.
And then the next thing, of course, is I don't think it's an unfair assumption to say that if you are getting lots and lots of work out of it, to pay 125, 140, 150 quid, whatever it is,
it's 150 this year.
150 quid, to pay 150 quid to get that work, to make sure that the insurance is paid. If you call, I would think if you're not making that on a job, then there is something terribly wrong, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so you have to,
absolutely. Because there's no question about it. Bee removal work is not easy work.
yeah,
It's not straightforward work. There's a reason it's expensive.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because of the level of work involved in it. And again, not to plug the book too much, but the book shows what work's involved.
yeah. Well, I'm going to get to that with you, yeah, for definite, because I think that's going to be, I think that'll be a big push forward. It'll certainly, yeah. But yeah, again, you've got these, you had people who are making quite a bit of money off it, who didn't want to pay or didn't want to assist with it. And I don't know what you thought of this or whether you think this assumption was fair or unfair, but it appeared to me that the people who were banging the drum the loudest were the people who weren't I'm just going to say it, were doing the worst work from what I saw. They weren't that comfortable, so I'm guessing that the corners that they were cutting were making it that the money wasn't there for them. Although they were doing the work, they probably weren't as profitable as they thought and didn't want to have to pay for it. But ultimately, you touched on that, didn't you? The work that is involved is intense, but because they are an emotive subject, and you hear people say it all the time, don't they? You know, if you leave a bee alone, a bee won't sting you and stuff. Well, you're not leaving it alone. Everything you do through that process is probably going to annoy them. And
Yeah,
the risk factor of dealing with 50 to 70,000 stinging insects. And here's the other thing as well. You're probably not dealing with 50 to 70,000 stinging insects, especially late in the season, because when you get robbing going on, I've never counted them, but I bet you'd be well close to 1 million if you've got some commercial colonies close by. You
yeah.
know, they can get pretty testy, can't they?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, we certainly can.
that level of risk has to be negated, doesn't it? There's
It
no
does.
around it.
It does.
But
And it
I've read it.
good.
I've read it. I liked it. I thought it was a great book. It taught me a lot. But I think what it does more than anything is, for me, this book does one thing brilliant. And I might be wrong. Someone might say, "Oh no, there's another book." I can't think of another piece of literature which puts down solely the process and thought process of removing a honeybee colony from within a building within the UK.
I was going to say, I was just going to say that you've got to remember the book's sort of designed in and around the UK. So what happens in there is not necessarily going to be right for America, Australia, France, Belgium, and so on and so forth.
I can't lie. I see the American extractions and I think, I wish we dealt with them.
Yeah, wooden buildings.
Plywood board, and it's there, isn't it? It's like
wooden buildings.
okay.
So the book come about. I was asked by the co-author Stuart Roberts about creating the book, and I was a little bit apprehensive to begin with until he explained to me it probably complement my the courses that we run, and to write it in that way. And the title gives everything away, Sean. It's a guide. It's not a manual. It's not a how-to. It's simply a guide. And in that, it guides you through the things that you should need to be thinking about before you do a bee removal. So it's probably quite, it's not going to be for every beekeeper, but I think most pest controllers will have a copy if they aren't doing bee removal and are looking to either employ bee removers or even looking to going into it themselves. I think it's a good, useful guide for that.
Yeah, I've got to be honest with you. I think my worry and my concern is always, or it is probably in the forefront of the mind of the people who do bee removals. But the most dangerous things that I've seen have undoubtedly been the advice that has been given from beekeepers to people prior to our
it's frightening sometimes. It is frightening sometimes.
I'm not going to go on about it. But I've given a couple of talks and to associations and stuff, and I say to them all the time, they are contacting you because you are a professional. That's what they see you as. So when you say it, it is taken as gospel. You have to make sure that what you are telling them is right. You know, you can't flim flam it, because at some point, if this goes wrong, it's going to go terribly wrong, isn't it? And is it going to go wrong with someone being stung and getting anaphylaxia during a removal? It's possible. I think it's a hell of a lot more probable when they tell them to light the fire and someone dies of carbon monoxide poisoning. Or that we went to one where they said, oh, they've swarmed out of the chimney, they're not there anymore, on an open fire.
Yeah. I remember a farmer friend of mine, he'd got some turned up in a chimney of his, and he rang me in a blind panic. Said he'd spoke to a beekeeper friend of his who'd suggested that he'd put a small fire in underneath his bees, and the concept of his small fire and what the beekeeper probably thought of a small fire were two different things.
Yeah.
And when I got there, he got oily rags and boxes and wood, and he built a small fire, literally
a small bonfire,
a small bonfire at the bottom of this chimney, and he'd smoked the entire house out. It was an old Victorian farmhouse, 3 floors, and smoke was billowing out of all the windows. So yeah, it's not the greatest advice, because you never know. You don't know from that phone call what state that chimney's in.
Yeah. But I think this is for anyone who keeps bees, and this is what beekeepers probably do realize, they are the first point of contact for bees in the chimney, because it is a natural progression, isn't it? I have bees in my chimney, so they say, who deals with bees? And they go, Billy down the lane, he keeps bees. You are his first point of contact. And I really think that this book is going to be brilliant for them to understand that getting them out.
I think the message is getting across to the beekeepers that, you know, bee removal is the way that they've been up until now. I think they've been a little frightened about forwarding pest controllers, because obviously they don't want to see their bees dying and so on and so forth. But I think it's become a little bit more common knowledge that bee removal exists now in a rather strong way within the pest control industry. I see year on year, I teach people, as you well know, you know, 10, 15 at a time. We're actually this year, the courses are at 10 places at a time, and we're only running 2 foundation courses this year. We are running some advanced courses this year that'll cover other stuff that isn't covered in the foundation course.
So for anyone watching this, you come do the foundation course. What does that do for you? What does it give you?
So the foundation course, Sean, you've been on it, so you know, and I know why you're asking. So the foundation course is really simply putting them into a position by where they could do the simplest of bee removals. And when I say the simplest, something in a floor or possibly a ceiling, providing that they're taking the necessary precautions. I'm not going to be able to tell you on a 5-minute Zoom call all the information that you can get in that course. I'm sure you can remember. When you came, it was a 2-day course. It's now a 3-day course, because there's more and more information. The industry, but the bee removal procedures have got more complex and more about them now than they did when I started sort of 10 years ago. They probably had the similar sort of thing, but it wasn't as, I remember starting back in 2009, and there was probably 4 or 5 people doing it, some longer than I have. Some people that have been doing it longer than I have. And some people have already retired from doing it.
Did they start the UKBR with you, or were you on your own from there?
No, so I approached a couple of people and made a suggestion that there should be a list or sort of a point of contact, and it was sort of well, maybe we should, and not a lot came of it, and hence why we sort of I started it up pretty much on my Jack Jones to start with. Tim Wiley come on board quite quickly because he, as you well know, he's quite well into his listed buildings. He's architect by trade, and knows listed buildings inside out, knows the legislation and everything else with that. But I digress back from the courses. So going back to the foundation course, so that's pretty much what the foundation course will give you. It gives you that. Now, not everybody that comes to the foundation course takes up bee removal. I'd probably say 50% of the class, so 5 out of the 10 may take up bee removal. Some in different levels, so some will take it quite to the point by where they do nothing else. Others will have it as a small part of their pest control business. And those that don't take it up are happier with the information that they've got, that they can go forward and make the assessments about hiring a bee remover to do the work that might come in for them, or simply just pass it on to another bee remover.
Yeah.
So that's what the course sort of brings about it, without sort of going into lots of detail.
Yeah. And there's another course coming out this year, but you haven't done that yet, so might as well save that for another day.
We can do, yeah. I think probably when you've done the course, Sean, you've done, because you've booked on it, aren't you?
Yeah, done, yeah.
For the February. By the way, you can't do the advanced courses without doing the foundation, simply because there's a lot of health and safety in the foundation, and I don't want to have to repeat that in the advanced courses. Yeah. So it's simply that it's just elongated in the foundation course, the health and safety. As you know, I go on about that quite a bit in on the first day.
Yeah, and I'm one of them saddos, aren't I? I grew up not being that keen on it because I wanted to get stuff done. But
I've never been great on the health and safety. But look,
yeah,
I've got two thumbs of different sizes, so my health and safety record isn't the best.
Yeah, as you get older, you learn, don't you?
Yeah, I learned very quickly.
Yeah.
So, and that's not me bragging. That was just pure stupidity. And
safety is, and this is the thing, isn't it? I guess, again, from a bit of an outsider looking in, the message for me from the UKBR has changed massively. Yeah. It started off as you don't have to kill them. And now I think it's relatively accepted across the country that is not the way forward, which I've got quite interesting to tell you, actually. And the message now is that the UKBR appears to be pushing is that it is, you need to do this, but you need to do this safely and you need to do it professionally.
Absolutely. And there's some great firms out there that are pushing those boundaries, you know, that are pushing that yourself, you know, Beacon, they do a great job with their work, you know. It's lots of that sort of thing going on. Those standards that are up there need to remain there.
Yeah. And then, of course, if that's where we're going, where are we now? What are you on with now with the UKBR? Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. What are you seeing that you like in the industry? And what are you seeing that you would like to change in the industry?
Oh, right. Okay. Good question, Sean. I'm not quite sure on, there's a lot goes on in my head in a day. Not only just the UKBR, but work and my processes. I suppose I want to see, you know, those I'd like to see the UKBR interact with, interact more, should I say, because we already interact with a lot of organisations. The MPTA has been massively supportive of the work that we do. Not so much the BPCA, but we do, not that we don't do anything on the face like we do with the MPTA. We sit in the background and the MPTA knock on our door, ask for pictures and bits and pieces. But
I think at this point it is fair to give the MPTA the kudos that without them, this wouldn't have happened either, would it? Or it certainly
well,
it
would have still happened. It just wouldn't have got off the ground as well, probably, without their support.
Yeah, they have been champions, in probably not openly champion it. They've just been champions of this cause in their actions, haven't they? They've been really good.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
The BBKA have been equally as supportive, as you know. We did a stand there last year.
The BBKA?
Yeah, the BBKA. They've been equally as supportive.
I can't remember the chairman's name. I had a chance to chat to him.
Stephen Barnes.
Yeah, and
the current chairman.
Yeah, very good. It was. I thought we were going to get a bit of pushback from the local beekeepers in my area. I thought it was going to be a bit difficult.
No,
they were fantastic, weren't they?
Yeah, the beekeeping fraternity are your best ally.
Yeah, absolutely.
In all fairness, are your best ally. You can make bridges and friends within the beekeeping circles of your local area.
Yeah,
you'll go a long way in bee removal.
Yeah. I don't mind telling you, I fell foul of that with my very local association. That was even knowing, but then we are quite close with a couple of associations just outside our area. And you're absolutely right, it's been a very I'm trying to think what the correct word is a big word, isn't it? Very symbiotic relationship. We have given an advice and we'll try whatever, and I'm sure that they've learned a bit from us. It's been really positive.
Yeah, it's always been my key for, as I say, I'll harp on about it. Always been my key about sharing that information. And one of the first things I say to the candidates that come on the course is, if the first caveman decided he wasn't going to share how he caught the first mammoth to feed everybody, we'd have got nowhere.
Yeah,
it's a similar sort of way. A similar sort of thing going on with the bee removal. People shouted at me about showing people how to do it. And, oh, you can't teach bee removal in 2 days. No, you can't teach bee removal in 2 days. Absolutely not.
So hang on a second. Did you get a bit of push?
Yeah, I did. There was a number of people that, a couple of the hardcore bee removers sort of said, it's no good. It's not, you can't possibly train anybody to do bee removal. No, you can't in 2 days. Absolutely true.
You can't teach someone to be a pest controller in 5 days.
Yeah, this is true. But what you do is install the right information at the beginning. It's like booting up a computer. When you come to the course, and it's changed massively since you did it, Sean. Now you get a bit of a test paper to see what you actually know.
Oh, really?
And then at the end, when you've done the course, you get another piece of paper to see how much you've learned.
Right.
And so we get a measure of what you have. And from that, I'm able to sort of say, well, you need to concentrate on that little bit of area because you've not, you've missed something there. What happens with the courses is that the learning doesn't stop at their door, as you well know. If anybody's made the value of their coming to my course, it's you.
Really?
Yes. How many times do you phone me in a week?
Oh, bloody hell. Yes, Polly put out a search party because I hadn't rang one day, didn't she? Thought it is missing.
But you know what I mean? The support for you going forward and developing your bee removal within your business doesn't stop at the course, doesn't stop when you walk out the door.
Yeah.
It continues beyond that.
And I think this is the thing with the UKBR. Like, obviously, it's quite clear. Like, the value in the UKBR is the chance of referrals in your area.
Yeah.
But actually, you only get those referrals if you are going to commit to being good at what you do, trying hard, getting better.
And engage.
Yeah, engaging. And then not only that, but there is a massive wealth of knowledge within each member.
Have you froze? Hello, Sean.
I've helped people with. That's my internet.
You dropped out then, mate. So I didn't hear any of that.
Yeah. Etc. Rams, whatever it is, there is someone there who is willing to help.
Yeah.
To get you, if you are always going to have questions, no matter what you do, and there will always be someone who has probably seen that problem before and can give you their take on that situation.
Yeah.
You know, it is a collective body, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, the future.
The future. We hope to gain sort of. So, as I say, we've got that button going up on the website in the very near future. Hopefully, that makes some things a lot more smoother, simpler to be able to, for the public to be able to contact somebody and find out the information that they need swiftly enough. The other things I think will come as bee removal starts to develop in other areas. I notice recently there's a lot of work going on in BVACs, Steve Cottrell, and one or two other people. Are you there?
Yeah, I don't know if that was me or you who dropped. I think it was me, but
it keeps dropping out.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of that it caught, but yeah, there's lots of areas that bee removal. I mean, it stretches across 3 or 4 different trades. You've got the building trade, you've got the pest control trade, you've got beekeeping within that. 1 or 2 bee farmers have stuck to taking it up just to help supplement their harvest and their incomes. And you've also got, the asbestos industry sitting there on the sidelines, waiting for people to give them a call for, suspect areas. If you don't know what that wall's made of, you need to be looking at making sure that you know, getting in touch with your local asbestos team. I think you're going to be doing a lot of editing to this.
Yeah, there's going to be a little bit. I'm hoping that it got you and I'm just sitting there looking like a statue, but yeah.
I hope it got me too. So yeah, there's lots of things out there. Well, I peered into the asbestos industry last year, went and did my approved asbestos removal ticket, which was quite enlightening, indeed. And it's one of the key things. One of the key things I think the UKBR are going to be sort of mentioning this year. The HSE are mentioning asbestos quite a bit of late, and I think we'll be following in that sort of same instance. Don't go punching holes in walls and ceilings if you have an inkling, even an inkling, that it might have asbestos. If the building's, an old building, suspect that there's asbestos in that wall or in that ceiling. get it tested. It's not a lot of money. We're
Yeah,
not talking lots of money to save on a lot of work, a lot of hassle, a lot of health issues.
yeah. I think for someone who is tuned in to any sort of degree to asbestos, you don't have to go far on people's posts to find several jobs which send the shivers down your spine, don't you? Where they've been,
Oh yeah,
and you think,
we've
oh
seen
my
it.
God, you know,
We've
oh
seen
my.
it.
And people forget this, don't you? You do an internal, and there's asbestos in the artery.
Artex.
You are inoculating that whole house with it, aren't you? You know,
I've had a recent one. I've had one recently for one of the national companies at a vets, and they decided not to use us and our asbestos team, and they used their own because we were too expensive for some whatever reason, and we're not talking lots of money.
yeah.
And their asbestos team went in and said, yeah, no, yeah, there's no asbestos in these areas. And I said, well, we've not tested the areas where the bees are. But you can't get to that area. But we've got to cut holes in the wall. You're going to have to test the walls. But then the bees are going to come out. Yeah, we know. That's why we advised that we came and did it.
Yeah.
You know, potentially you don't have to call the whole thing out for a test. If the test proves positive, then we've got to start coring and diverting them to see what else is behind the board. But that's for the asbestos teams to do. It's not for you to do. It's it's for them that are qualified to do that sort of work, to go in and do that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a fatality, isn't it? But I'm conscious of our John for a while. Moving on, we had Tim from Envu on. Well, I say we. Alex Wade had Tim
Oh right, yeah.
Envu on the Pest Controllers Networking meeting on the Friday night, because
Mm-hmm.
I guess every pest controller is aware that FICAM is going. Well, they're putting some dates on it, and I think once the date is set, they'll give us 180 days for usage, and then after that, even if you've got it stockpiled, you're not allowed to use it. Now, I know FICAM had bees removed from it a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not naive enough to think that people aren't still using it against them and writing
Yeah.
another down. The other two white dusts on the market are not effective. FICAM's not effective in a lot of occasions, but these are going to be even worse. However, and Tim will correct us, I'm sure, if I've picked up on this wrong. The reason why it was stopped was because it was going to cost them an extraordinary amount of money to get it registered.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they didn't mind paying it because everyone said, well, you could put the price of a tub of FICAM up 4 times and would still buy it. Yep, absolutely. What he said was they would put that money through and they would get that product authorized, but the changes on the product would be so dramatic that it wouldn't be any use to us. So effectively what he was saying is squirting FICAM into a hole where wasps were, whether that's an air vent or tiles or whatever it is,
Yeah.
externally or internally, was not going to be allowed because that
Mm-hmm.
FICAM would sit in that nest for a long period of time. It wouldn't be recovered, and we didn't know if it was going to be disturbed
Mm-hmm.
or go on to poison further things. And the question was asked, does that mean that we lose other dusts? And to be fair to Tim, he said, I don't know, they're not our product, we don't sell them. But there was clearly an inference from the people in the room that there is a high chance or a high probability that when these other products go for registration, using them on wasps or anything in those circumstances will probably be removed from the label and the authority.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it caused shockwaves through the pest control industry. But if that happens, it basically means that bee removal is going to be the only way forward because there is no backdoor. There will be no more, oh yeah, I used Vulcan with a bit of a wink whilst you're
Yeah.
having sprayed it with FICAM. It's not going to be available.
No.
And spraying a liquid insecticide in the entrance, you may as well throw chocolate at them.
I've always said that entrance treatments are not, they're not reliable. You might be lucky and kill kill the colony early on in the season. But a strong, healthy colony in the middle of summer, you're going to need to go back to it several times to even, have a chance of wiping it out.
Yeah, and of course, it's funny how with training comes education, with education comes knowledge, I guess, doesn't it? And it's funny because you don't know what you don't know. So I tell this story. We killed a colony in Eagles Cliff in Yarm. Probably the first year I was active as a commercial pest controller, and not just someone dodging about. So that would have been before I met you. Went up, had no knowledge really, rang up for advice, rang the distributors and said, yeah, you can treat it with FireCam after you've done it, block it up so that no foraging bees can get in and taking it back, because you don't want to kill the local populations, etc. So like, right, brilliant. Went up, blasted it, blocked up the air vents on a chimney at the top. Do you know what I mean? Like, which sends shivers down my spine now. Genuinely thought I was doing the right thing. Come back to it, however many years later, I think it was last year, we got the call, you've done a great job for me, can you come back and kill it again? Well, I can't, but I can come back and have a look. And these bees had entered an air brick in a chimney over and had managed to get through the cavity wall and into that colony.
I think I remember you telling me about this
one. So you stand there and you think, even blocking it up, until you have kept bees, it is I say to the customers all the time, bees can get to honey the same way a fly can get to a dead rat or whatever it is. They get there.
Yeah,
absolutely. And blocking them up, if they're in a cavity wall or something like that, for my liking, it's relatively impossible. Get in, aren't they?
Completely agree.
Yeah. So if this dust does go out the window in however long, bee removal is going to be the only way to deal with them, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
So it's a growth industry in it. There's no getting around it.
No, it is growth industry, and it's growing all the time, Sean.
And it's specialist work, isn't it? I think it's a great time to get into it now, because I know in my area, and this isn't me being a bigger, this is me just being realistic, I feel like we are 4 years ahead of everyone else. They've got 4 years to do to catch up to us, because, as you say, there's a guide, there is no encyclopedia, there is no handbook of how to do it. It is simply a guide, and you have to work off your own experiences after that, don't you, to a degree. So people have then got to catch up with, I don't know, 40, 50, 100, 150 extractions where things have went well and things have went bad, and you've worked things out. And that was the industry early on, wasn't it? There would have been times when every single person survived by the skin of the teeth.
I know. I wish there was somebody like me knocking about when I started bee removal.
Yeah, agreed.
So a lot further on, but there wasn't. So I had to go along and make mistakes, and what's it? And that's one of the other things the course came about, was to help other people not to have to make those mistakes.
Yeah, and bees, I asked Tim about it. I said, when it was registered last, FireCam, it was FireCam, so it was bendiacarb we've lost this time, but the last registration was for the product, not for the active. I said, how come bees were taken off the label last time? He said, well, they're an emotive subject, aren't they? So I believe, and again, to my correctors, that part of the reason that they were removed was because of the public opinion in relation to them. And I've seen some people talking about honeybees have never been in a healthier position. There is more colonies than ever. However, I've quite got into me beekeeping now. I think it's safe to say that
have you
a little bit, yeah. It's growing out the legs, yeah. The one thing that a lot of people, maybe some pest controllers who go, oh, there's loads of honeybees and they're doing this damage and that damage because there's too many of them. Maybe in London that might be correct. But now you know, apivores stopping to work, amatraz, they're starting to develop, and really for beekeepers, they are starting to get their hands tied behind their back with regards to how they are effectively going to keep these colonies alive.
Yeah.
It is getting harder, isn't it? That even in the sort of 4 years I've been keeping them, I've noticed that that there are problems. You've got oxalic acid, you've got this, you've got that, you've got the no treatment lads who are going down that route, which is probably the future, but that's going to take an awful long time, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I always think to myself as well, you only know what you know. And when we talk about moving bees, EFB, AFB, I bet you they have stuff we haven't even discovered.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt,
Really
without a
do.
doubt.
Yeah. I can remember watching one and someone said, oh, he sent his bees away to get tested for viruses. I thought of viruses like, I've never heard of them. Probably now, I probably won't hear of them again for another 10 years. There's loads of them out there and you're just waiting for it to kick off, aren't you? Small hive beetle arrives in this country. Is it going to come?
There's potential. It's the same as Asian hornet, though, isn't it? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
if it comes, it's going to be come by transport, isn't it?
Yeah. Italy.
It's not
Italy's
going to get here on its own. It's going to get here by transport.
yeah. Well, but Italy has it now, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, and they were one of the places where we're bringing lots of bees in from. Asian hornets, they reckon they're just coming over on the wind now, don't they, from France?
I've no idea. I've not heard that one, Sean.
Yeah, that's what I've been told. So yeah, so it's an interesting time to be a beekeeper, is it not? And
Interesting time to be a pest controller.
oh crikey, yeah,
Isn't it?
we love it. It's funny when you said earlier on you were talking about it, and sometimes I think the pest control industry gets a little bit too much kudos for this, because I see it often said on Facebook where they'll say, "Oh, you'll need a specialist pest control firm to remove that." But actually, you're no longer a pest controller, are you? You're a bee.
No, I'm not. I'm just bee removal is 60% of my business, and the other 40% is, as you know, my honey beekeeping side.
Yeah. So how many pest controllers to beekeepers do you have in the UKBR now then?
Oh, crikey, Sean, that's a good question. I think, in all fairness, they are probably 99% pests. Well, I suppose if you count myself, you're going to be looking at around about 90% pest controllers and 10% beekeepers.
I thought it was maybe the pest control industry is getting absolutely the kudos it deserves, and I thought there was a lot more beekeepers involved in it than that. I didn't realize it
There
was.
probably is in the background, but they're sort of they're beekeepers that want to go and help their local neighbour. You know, a friend out here and there. There's a lot of those beekeepers about, and it's okay for perhaps one safe one, but you've really got to know what you're doing. And there's been a review from the former editor of the Irish Beekeeper on that book. Did I send you the review?
No.
Did I not? Oh, sorry, I missed that. I'll do that in a second. But it sort of goes along the lines of, you know, the book, whilst it gives the guidelines of about bee removal, it also shows to those that may be are collecting swarms from trees and the like, that there's a little bit more to bee removal than just going along with a box and hopefully brushing a few in. I got to a job last year where a beekeeper had attempted to do a bee removal in a chimney. I think I might have told you about this one.
Yeah, I think you did.
Across in the East Midlands, and they they got to the property. They opened up this chimney, made an awful mess, smashing open the chimney. Took about 3 or 4 pieces of comb out, stood them on top of the chimney, and decided it was too much. They couldn't do it, and left the dear old lady and the roofer battling about, looking for somebody to get it sorted out. And it had to be done relatively quickly. It was almost an emergency sort of job, really more a job for a pest controller to go on and do. I'd got very limited time anyway. I managed to go across and help out, and it was a really sorry state of affairs.
Did they survive?
No, I don't think it did.
Yeah, I was going to say it's.
I don't think it did. From memory, I don't think it did, Sean.
Was
It was in a real mess.
There
was honey. The bees were drowning in the honey that had been dislodged, and they because I think it had been open for about 3 or 4 days by the time it got to me, and they've been fighting off robbing bees. It was in the middle of July, it might have been early August. They've been fighting off robbing bees, and the colony was absolutely shattered. You could see it was tired. And it was a real royal mess. And I felt for the lady as much as I felt for the bees, you know, being somebody, he'd gone along and said that he could do the work. And then when it come to the crunch, he really hadn't got an idea of what he was expecting to find.
It's that old thing, innit? You don't know what you don't know. I guess he thought he was going to go in and pull out nice straight slabs that, you know, like pulling them out of a hive, and then you walk in and it's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. You never know what you've got until you open it up.
Yeah, you know, we've got a builder who works for us, and his favourite saying is, when it starts getting tough, he looks as he says, "Well, we're here now." Not going over you. No, yeah, no. Well, it's finish at 11, 12 o'clock, whatever time you finish.
Yeah,
Won't you?
that's the thing, isn't it? You can't stop once you start them.
You can't knock off and go home, can you, and start again tomorrow? You're there till you're there, aren't you? You know, we're here now.
Generally speaking, you are.
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes you can potentially open it up one day and go back and start to take it out the following day. So you've got a full day of taking it out, depending on the circumstances. Every bee job's different, you know that.
Yeah.
You can have 3 colonies in the same building that they'll all be different.
Yeah.
Every single one will be different.
Advice for someone who has bees, and advice for someone who wants to become a bee remover, and advice for bee removers at this time.
Advice for somebody looking for that's got bees. Don't be afraid to ring your pest controller. It's becoming clearer that they know as many people in bee removal as your beekeeper. So that's pretty much it. I suppose I really should have shouted out, ring the UKBR, but that's not what the UKBR is about. It's about getting lots of people to engage, and take that message forward. Yes, if we've got 100 or 200 members, then shout the UKBR, because there'll be somebody close by. The membership is still quite small at the moment and quite scattered across the country, but it's growing.
So who can join? What's the criteria for joining the UKBR if they are wanting to go down that route?
So there currently is no qualifications required to do bee removal. That might be something later on, many moons down the line. This is still a baby industry, but the criteria is making sure that you've got insurance. We are going to have some bits and pieces at the end of this year for next year, such as healthy bee plans and that sort of thing coming into place. And as you and I know, we've been talking about accreditation schemes and bits and pieces, and those will evolve throughout this year, hopefully, going along. by where health and safety will need to be a strong part of that criteria. Accreditation to at least one health and safety scheme.
BBK insurance good enough?
No, you know that's so.
I'm just watching this who don't.
Just in case there's any beekeepers listening in on this, no, BBK insurance doesn't cover you to start taking buildings apart. It doesn't cover you to,
Just out of interest, because I've got my own insurance of that next level up. We have massively high insurances. I have BBK insurance, but because I've never needed it, because mine sort of supersedes it, what does BBK insurance cover?
It covers you to go and collect a colony of honeybees that are out in the open, effectively, and it, as long as they are reachable, you won't be able to go and get yourself on a ladder and go and collect it off a wall.
Right.
It doesn't cover you for that sort of thing.
So I'm guessing this is quite good for local associations to be in touch with their bee removers, because hopefully they will have the necessary.
Absolutely, and vice versa, Sean. Pest controllers, bee removers. It's a good idea to have strong ties with your local associations.
Yeah, we don't collect swarms as a general rule. I'll do it if we are absolutely stuck, but I just see them as the although I do keep bees, I see them as a beekeeper's resource for them to fill the apiaries as they want. And maybe at the end of the season, if they've got all their boxes filled and they're stuck, we'll go and pick one up for them. But
I don't generally collect swarms. I will if I'm called, but I don't get very many.
Or if they're here.
The calls I get are for the ones that are difficult. The guys at I'm on the swarm list, but I rarely get called for it. And in fact, 9 times out of 10, when I do get called, I'm in the middle of doing a bee removal anyway. And I can't get to I couldn't possibly get to the swarm in time, so. Generally pass them on.
Like last year, we had that twice last year. We only got called for 2 swarms and we're both up to the eyes in the middle of a job, and you're like, I just can't get there. But so I think that about concludes it, unless you want to add anything more or say anything on. By the way, I'm onto this another book.
Oh, you're onto that.
Excellent. Old brother Adam.
That was actually bought from Buckfast Abbey. I picked that up at Buckfast. Yeah, I picked it up at Buckfast Abbey while I was there at Christmas.
Ah, right. Oh well, it makes it a bit more.
Because here's my copy, just in case you thought I sent you my copy.
It's funny how like finds like, in it, because I love reading a book.
There's my copy.
Yours looks shiny, mine looks dull. Is it just your camera?
That's just because the light's there, see.
All right.
So
I think it's an exciting time, isn't it? And hopefully
it is exciting time, Sean, and I hope I just hope it continues in the same way as it all sort of started off. People pass on that information and others get involved in doing it. It's enjoyable. I don't find anything more satisfying than doing a bee removal. I really get a bit of a kick out of it.
Yeah, I think for me, the future for me and my interest in it, and I know we've had this conversation, is the aftercare. I see that as being
that's really important. I don't like to see these. I see it from time to time where people are putting chucking comb into boxes out. I don't see the point in that. So they need some support. At least 2 to 3 frames need support. If you're going to do training boxes, you need at least 2 frames of support, and then let them wild build in the rest of it. But
I don't understand how you can get it in the right orientation if you just put.
It's difficult to get it in the right orientation when you're taking it apart.
Yeah. But like if you just put it in a box, it's
Yeah. It won't go together the same as it came out. It's impossible.
yeah,
Absolutely impossible to take it out and put it back in the same way.
yeah,
Unlike your movable frames in your hives, that's a completely different thing altogether.
yeah.
It's not that.
Yeah. I just think that for me, the thing I don't like is taking the bees out and giving them to someone else and not looking after them. I understand why it's done. I understand that that is
Yeah, not every bee remover, has the tenacity to go and start beekeeping. I get that.
I
Understand it.
my worry and my concern is that it's quite clear, isn't it, that there was always a suspicion cast on feral colonies as being the cause of AFB outbreaks. I've never
Potential, yeah.
yeah, and my concern is that the first time that one is found, or worse, one is traced back to that, then the damage that could be done, and realistically, how many beekeepers are genuinely going to have a quarantine apiary? Like I think as a bee remover,
Yeah, I encourage all the guys that come to the course, as you well know,
yeah,
to if you're going to be doing the recovery work yourself, from the bee removals, you need to register a quarantine apron.
yeah, yeah. But I've got to be totally honest with you. I think I've learned as much about bee removals from the aftercare as I have from the doing.
Yeah,
From
absolutely.
everything from disease, parasites, stress, how it affects them, how they behave. It really it is that link between the removal and why you're doing it and how it's going to work. From the numbers of bees that you need to take in relation to the comb, how much comb you can take, etc., etc. We try to sort of maybe overanalyze that a bit, but if you are just taking the bees and the comb and dropping them off, my gut feeling is that you are not going to get the most out of it, and your bee removals aren't going to be as good as you think.
Could be.
Yeah, yeah. I just think from my own personal views of it, I genuinely feel like we've learned as much through looking after them afterwards than we have through taking them out. There's things when the builder's doing stuff, I can see things that he's doing that I don't like because I know they're going to get us in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks time.
Yeah.
No, we're not. We're going to take it out this way, that way. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to get it back. And I think the other thing to say as well is for any beekeeper who, and you get it, don't you? If you need somewhere for the bees, I'll have them because they think they're going to get a swarm. There has to be a massive realization that you are not getting a swarm. You are getting a very stressed out colony that is going to show you every negative trait it has in the next however many weeks after that removal. Or I can remember we took one out last year and it was the most beautiful colony I've ever seen. Those big plates of cap brood, big plates of brood, and yeah, by the time that they couldn't get them capped, when they were under that much stress, we just had ball brood all over, and you're like, and I'm sure that colony was predisposed to it. It was just doing quite well with it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
I mean, stress will bring out disease like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And that's why I always sort of try and push people to try and get your bee removals done as early as possible. But the nature of the beast means that you're going to be taking them out at height of the season, and when you get to that height of the season, stress levels in those removals go, climb, and the triggers for disease are heightened at those points. It's almost, in some respect, it almost bears contemplating whether or not you split those colonies and create two rather than one, or other things that you can potentially do with them, possibly bolster up weak colonies. But then you've got the potential trigger again of spreading disease about. So there's lots of things you can do, but you just got to give it. And as I say, one of the things about the UKBR and the B courses and the book and everything else is to get people thinking and interacting, engaging, and putting this, you know, putting minds together. Pest control didn't have the BPCA and the MPTA at the beginning, did it?
No.
You know, the Birmingham rat catchers didn't have the BPCA and the MPTA and the wonderful gadgets that we've got today to keep us all in touch with one another, and communications and learning processes that we have today. And that's kind of where I see bee removal. It's at that very beginning. It's not so much at its very beginnings, but it's evolving quite rapidly. I mean, you've seen changes since you've started. I've seen massive changes since I've started.
I think from a personal point of view, I would love to get, although I'm not a member of BIBA.
It's 20 quid.
Yeah, I just mean from like a time point of view, I would love to touch base with them, because I do think that what we are taking out is a valuable genetic resource.
You read the passage on the back of that book.
The what, sorry?
The passage on the back of that book says something similar.
I didn't read your book. It's the only thing I haven't read is the back cover. I should have read it. Yeah, the only thing I haven't read. But yeah, the origin at the minute, I don't know. A lot of the dark British bees, black British bees. I don't want to call them that because who knows what they are? They're just a black bee, aren't they? But
I don't get into the genetics.
Yeah, I'm kind
Sean,
of
it's too complicated for me.
I'm giving them away, Clive. Away because I look carefully for the people who I think will get them and keep them and nurture them and look after them and love them. Maybe it's not the commercial beekeepers, because you know as well as I do, when you're pulling some of them out, you know that you could have them for 10 years and you wouldn't get a super honey off them. Do you know what I mean? Just enough, don't they?
Yeah.
But they've been in that wall for 8, 9, 10, 11. I think
It's amazing the difference between
15.
different colonies.
Yeah, and you know, don't you? And you think, but I think I would love to touch base with BIBA from a personal point of view and see if they are having an interest in. I've got a box of bees sitting on my roof at the minute in the back garden, which are black as, you know, anything someone would probably be interested in. They're not really what we're trying to keep and what we do, and I think they're ready for a lovely.
In your beekeeping side, you mean?
Yeah, well, for me, it's taken. There's two now very distinct parts which I never realised would happen. We had the bees which we were removing and keeping, and they were, as you know, of all different shapes and sizes and all different characteristics, etc. And I had no interest in producing honey at all, zero. And then the bees got the better of us, and I ended up buying in bees and looking at bees and enjoying bees and messing on with them. And now you're like looking, I'm thinking, I could give that a go. But the truth is, I think you would have to do a lot of years of extracting before you ended up with colonies that were capable of producing a lot for you, or you'd have to be very lucky in what you were taking out. From what we were taking out, we would have been going an awful long time before you could have a go at it, and I knew that was the case. I thought I'm going to have to buck the trend and get something in. So, but then now we have apiaries which are kept well out the way, which are ours, and then we have the quarantine apiaries, and when they come out the quarantine apiary, I just like
to assess them there.
Yeah, exactly. From me,
and you're not the first pest controller that's come along and took up beekeeping. Not only as a hobby, I've got guys that have come along the course. They've done the course. They were probably already dabbling in beekeeping, and they've extended from that into semi-commercial beekeeping.
I could head that way in the blink of an eye. Yeah, head that way in the blink of an eye. I think
there's no stress, is there?
Well,
there is, but it's not the same sort of stress as you get in pest control.
Like it or not, when you've got your head in a box of bees, you can't be thinking anything else, can you?
No.
you know, and for me, as you know, sometimes my arms go like bees' wings, for want of a better word.
Mm.
You learn very quickly that you have to go bloody slow, don't you? And you have to
Oh
take
yeah,
time in it.
absolutely.
Isn't
It's
it?
all about time. It's all about pace. I'm not one for rushing a bee removal.
But I just mean from opening up my boxes. You know,
Mm.
I usually keep a Sunday for my
But
bees.
I take my beekeeping practices to my bee removals.
Yeah,
So I'm not quick at taking it out.
we're
Um,
rapid.
um, I cut carefully, I cut slowly, and I take it out a bit at a time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
We go sort of mob-handed, don't we?
we
So,
we will have bored the horse off these people that are all going to be showing this.
well, I can shut up, Carl. Well, yeah. How long we've been on? A little while now. It was only supposed to be an hour, Clive. You kept talking, mate. But yeah, right. I'm going
You
to shut.
know, it's a passion, so I can
Yeah,
talk forever in a day.
yeah, and I'm sure there's people who'll watch for 10 minutes, and there's other people who'll watch it to the end and thoroughly enjoy it. Some of them will watch at the end, but they'll have fallen asleep. Who knows? But
Yeah, I mean, I think the last words are if bee removal is something you want to either look into or you want to know more about, that book will be a good starting point.
yeah, yeah. I wish it had been written when I first thought about it. You know, I really do.
Mm,
But yeah, thank you very much. Thank you everything you've done for me and for others, and
yeah,
I'm
no,
sure we'll continue to have a great friendship.
yeah, no worries.
All right, my
Thank you
friend.
very much, Sean. It's been
Have a
a
good
pleasure
night.
talking to you as usual.
Bye bye.
Cheers, mate.